United Nations raises money to help millions in Yemen who are on the brink of famine. The African migration crisis. We'll examine the causes and politics behind it. And traditional dishes come to their rescue in the biggest slums of South Africa. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening, I'm Esther Gidhu. Ewart Vincent Makori is on assignment. This is Africa 54. The cry for help by millions of people on the brink of famine in war-torn Yemen is being heard. The United Nations has raised more than 50% of the $2.1 billion it needs to provide life-saving assistance to about 19 million people. The world body raised the money Tuesday from international donors during a high-level pledging conference in Geneva, Switzerland. The UN Secretary General says the money could be the difference between life and death.
We are here today to turn the tide of suffering and to create hope. The international community has the power and the means to end this crisis. A famine can be prevented if we act quickly and commit to funding crucial life-saving assistance, and if all parties fulfill their obligations under international humanitarian law.
The UN estimates indicate at least 10,000 people have been killed by 2 years of civil war, along with thousands injured, and more than 3 million people have been forced to flee their homes. The war has devastated Yemen's economy and damaged or destroyed nearly 300 health facilities, putting millions at risk of disease and other threats. Guterres told the delegates 17 million people in Yemen are food insecure and 7 million are facing starvation. The Horn of Africa is being particularly hard hit by hunger and drought, and thousands of people are seeking refuge in neighboring countries, while others are dying on the high seas on the Mediterranean as they seek refuge in Europe. Joining us live via Skype is Professor Abdi Samatar of the University of Minnesota and a native of Somalia. Professor, welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you, Esther.
Now, Professor, help us to understand here what the missing link is, because when you look at a country like Botswana, which is in Southern Africa and is drought-borne, we haven't seen a famine or even mass migration of people from there. What is it that Botswana is doing right that the countries of the Horn and Eastern African countries are not doing?
Botswana is doing many things right, but key to this issue is the preparedness of a government that listens to its people.
I am losing the sound, Professor. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you quite well.
Yes, go ahead.
I said the government of Botswana is doing a number of things right. First and foremost is that it listens to its people. Then it tends to needs.
I'm still having audio problems, Professor.
I can hear you quite well.
Well, we'll probably get back to the professor. Let's see what we appreciate his insights so far. We'll see what goes on. Let's move on to the story of a prominent Ugandan academic charged with cyber harassment after she repeatedly posted criticism of President Yoweri Museveni and his wife on Facebook. And she was denied bail by the court Tuesday. Stella Nyanzi, a university research fellow and lecturer, referred to Museveni and his wife, who is also the education minister, as empty-brained in a post on her Facebook page. The posts are said to have been triggered by a dispute over the government failing to fund sanitary pads for schoolgirls, despite promises from the president to budget them. Nyanzi, who was arrested on April 7th and charged in court on April 10th, entered a plea of not guilty. Her lawyer says Nyanzi has been denied bail and the case has been adjourned until May 10th. Zambian opposition leader Hakainde Hichilema remains in custody after court refused on Wednesday to throw out treason charges against him. Hichilema's case has stoked political tensions 4 months after contested elections. The United Party for National Development leader was arrested in a police raid on his home earlier this month and charged with trying to overthrow the government. Hichilema's lawyers appealed, saying the charges were too vague. But Magistrate Greenwell Malumani told the packed hearing his court did not have the authority to quash the charge and referred the case up to the High Court. President Edgar Lungu's Patriotic Front Party beat the UPND in the August 2016 election that was marred by violence. Now, amid growing tensions over North Korea's missile and nuclear programs, the U.S. military has begun moving parts of an anti-missile defense system onto a deployment site in South Korea. Demonstrators confronted police in Seongju County Wednesday as trucks carrying elements of the Terminal High Altitude Area Defense System were moved onto a former golf course. Seoul and Washington say the sole purpose of the advanced THAAD system is to defend against missile launches from North Korea, refuting China's claims that it is a threat to its own security. Pyongyang has conducted several ballistic missile tests in recent months and is believed to be preparing for a 6th nuclear weapons test. Meanwhile, U.S. President Donald Trump has invited all 100 U.S. senators to the White House Wednesday for a classified briefing that will primarily concern North Korea. Two prominent U.S. lawmakers say President Trump's former national security advisor appears to have violated federal law by not properly disclosing payments he received from foreign governments for public engagements. Republican Jason Chaffetz and Elijah Cummings, the committee's senior Democratic member, said Tuesday that General Michael Flynn would have needed permission to deliver a paid speech at a gala sponsored by the Russian-funded television station RT in 2015, when he sat at the same table with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Flynn received $45,000 for the appearance and more than $500,000 for lobbying on behalf of the Turkish government.
But as a former military officer, you simply cannot take money from Russia, Turkey, or anybody else. And it appears as if he did take that money. It was inappropriate, and there are repercussions for the violation of law.
Chaffetz and Cummings leveled the allegations against Flynn after the White House denied the committee's request for documents relating to his contact with foreign nationals. Press Secretary Sean Spicer downplayed claims the White House denied the request, saying the committee had received all the documents it needed from other agencies.
And right now, to ask the White House to produce documents that were not in the possession of the White House is ridiculous.
Flynn was forced to leave the White House after lying to Vice President Mike Pence about his conversations with Russian Ambassador to the United States, Sergei Kislyak, during the transition period before Trump's inauguration. Now, in his first public appearance since leaving the White House, former President Barack Obama participated in a discussion in his adopted hometown on the campus of the University of Chicago, where he once served on the faculty. As VOA's Ken Farabaugh explains, while the location of his visit has historic meaning, the focus of his conversation shed some light onto what an Obama post-presidency might look like.
Thank you. Hey!
In front of students and recent graduates, former President Barack Obama returned to the spotlight on a stage with young leaders whose work and backgrounds echo that of his own when he was a community organizer on Chicago's South Side.
And I am the first to acknowledge that I did not set the world on fire.
But instead of talking more about his past, Obama focused on how his new career as a former president and his new Obama Foundation can help the next generation of community organizers.
I think what it says is that once an organizer, always an organizer.
Mark Hansen says Obama's post-presidential aspirations have the hallmarks of his campaign for president, in which the themes of hope and change helped energize voters.
I think his intention is to try to inspire a sense of public service in young people, and particularly inspire a sense of public service in young people who come from more disadvantaged backgrounds and whose voices are oftentimes not heard.
They are the kind of young people Jamal Cole helps through his nonprofit organization, My Block, My Hood, My City, which helps get youth out of isolated communities by giving them opportunities to see the larger city and world around them. Cole says his efforts captured the attention of the Obama Foundation, which gave him a ticket to attend the discussion.
He laid a blueprint on how to be an organizer. I'm an organizer, and so I'm always enjoy learning from him.
Cole ultimately wants to work with the foundation and hopes that might lead to more help to accomplish his goals.
I think he's going to use this platform to empower people that are doing great work, especially community organizers. A lot of times it's hard for us to get, access to resources. I think his foundation has those relationships, and they'll be supporting us with resources, so that's a good thing.
The single most important thing I can do is to help in any way I can prepare the next generation of leadership to take up the baton and to take their own crack at changing the world.
This is a beginning only in shaping that legacy. I think what it does is to indicate the direction that he would like his own work after his presidency to take. But I also think that he wants to highlight especially the kinds of contributions his presidency made to communities.
Contributions that are still shaping communities, most notably the neighborhood on the south side of Chicago where the former president once lived and which will host his presidential library and museum. Kane Fairbaugh, VOA News, Chicago, Illinois.
Britain, where the Industrial Revolution began over 200 years ago, has recorded its first full day without using coal power. The milestone was achieved Friday following years of investment in renewable energy, a trend being replicated in some other European countries and even in developing nations. Henry Ridgwell reports from London.
It is the fuel that powered Britain's Industrial Revolution and helped build the empire, but it came at a cost. In the 1950s, blankets of pollution from burning coal, known as smog, killed thousands of Londoners. Times have changed. The last deep coal mine closed in 2015. All coal-fired power stations will be closed by 2025. Many welcome its demise.
To be honest, a time for the human race to celebrate. I mean, certainly the humans who live in the UK. Coal has been a fantastic energy source, and no one would want to decry its historical role. But it is the dirtiest energy source. It's dirty both locally and it's dirty globally.
Nuclear and gas still form a big part of Britain's energy mix, but the coal-free milestone was reached through a huge expansion of renewable energy.
So that's both solar and wind. And when the sun is shining and the wind is blowing together, the capacity of renewables now generates a lot of electricity. And it was that fortuitous circumstance that brought us to a day without coal.
Much of the progress is due to the plunging cost of renewables, particularly offshore wind farms. But Britain is lagging behind others in Europe. Portugal went more than 4 straight days on renewable energy in 2016. The rapid progress offers an opportunity for developing economies to bypass the type of polluting industrialisation that once characterised Britain.
It's much cheaper to build decentralised solar than it is to put in a grid with a standard fossil fuel infrastructure. With the solar tomorrow, it's going to be, with the cost of solar tomorrow, it's going to be an absolute no-brainer.
In the United States, President Donald Trump has enacted legislation to roll back environmental regulations, pledging to put coal miners back to work and invest in so-called carbon capture technology.
My administration is putting an end to the war on coal. Going to have clean coal, really clean coal.
But many analysts say the plunging cost of renewables compared to coal means it will likely make little economic sense to reopen the mines. Henry Ridgwell for VOA News, London.
We want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our show live on Facebook, so check us out and share our show with your friends. Also, check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Coming up, U.S. President Donald Trump says he does not fear a trade war with Canada. Stay with us.
My name's Carla Babb, and I work the Pentagon Beat. That access helps me to do better stories. Every day, it's my responsibility to collect all of the defense news. It keeps our VOA viewers informed. I get to travel all across the globe. Anything that's defense-related and how to protect and keep people safe, that's where I'll go. So it's never a dull moment at the Pentagon. My name is Carla Babb. This is my beat.
I'm Millar Sega. I'm the host of VOA's The Correspondents, a roundup of the world's top stories with analysis from our dedicated reporters. It's really a conversation the same way that you would bring a friend to your home and ask them what's going on. And our correspondents will do that and answer those questions through their own eyes.
That appears a false choice in more ways than one.
We can't actually put you there, but we can come pretty close. In 30 minutes, we'll show you the world.
Welcome back. In Wednesday's business report, the Nasdaq Composite broke another record at the open of trade as the major averages hit key milestones this week. Africa 54 correspondent Jill Malandrino has the details from the Nasdaq market site in New York. Jill.
Good afternoon, Esther. U.S. stocks opened relatively flat on Wednesday. It's been quite a week for the major averages as the Nasdaq Composite crossed a major milestone, closing above the 6,000 level on Tuesday. In fact, we actually crossed to another record high this morning on Wednesday at 60.37. The small cap Russell 2000 index hit a record high intraday on Tuesday as well. The Dow Jones Industrial Average crossed 21,000, and the S&P 500 traded not too far from its record high. Now, this all happened just a day after surging on macro and geopolitical events throughout the day after strong earnings results from several Dow components helped with that upward momentum. Now, given the strong earnings results and an expected announcement from President Trump on tax reform today, there seems to be zero fear in the market, even ahead of a possible government shutdown this weekend if a budget deal is not reached. Now, in fact, the VIX, a broad measure of volatility in the market, sank almost 6% in one day. Going back to 1990, this was the fourth largest one-day percentage drop ever. Defensive sectors and assets such as gold, bonds, and the yen sold off on this rally, while utilities underperformed as investors rotated into financials, tech, industrials, and healthcare. Now, the big news this week is going to be Thursday after the market closes, as we have 5 key NASDAQ-listed components all reporting at the same time. From the NASDAQ market site in New York, I'm Jill Malandrino, and this is VOA Business News.
Thank you, Jill. U.S. President Donald Trump says he does not fear a trade war with Canada after American punitive action on lumber and milk. The administration has imposed a steep tariff averaging 20% on imported Canadian softwood lumber, and the president has vowed to take further action over Canada's protection of its dairy industry. Trump discussed his motivation during a meeting with American farmers at the White House.
Realize Canada has been very rough on the United States. Everyone thinks of Canada as being wonderful, and so do I. I love Canada. But they've outsmarted our politicians for many years, and you people understand that.
The United States and Canada are the world's 2 largest trading partners, but the lumber squabble is rooted in a couple of centuries of history. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau vowed to defend his country against the Trump administration's actions. During a phone call with President Trump later Tuesday, Trudeau called the allegations baseless, according to a statement issued by the Prime Minister's office. There is a lot of debate about the impact of automation on U.S. jobs. Robots have already displaced millions of manufacturing workers, and automation is getting cheaper, more capable, and far more common in the much larger services sector. This area includes everything from truck driving to banking and has far more jobs than were ever found in factories. VOA's Jim Randall reports.
5 million U.S. manufacturing jobs disappeared in recent years. While some politicians blame trade, many economists say automation is mostly to blame, as robots took over many routine tasks previously done by humans who made better than average wages. Self-driving cars and trucks show automation's growing impact in the far larger services sector. Millions of human jobs are at stake here, according to an expert at the University of Virginia's Darden School of Business, Professor Ed Hess.
Yes, it has happened. And yes, it's going to continue to happen at even larger numbers, because we're just at the beginning of automation of the service sectors. And it's going to be broad and it's going to be deep.
Hess says fast food jobs are vulnerable as companies install electronic kiosks to take restaurant orders, though McDonald's says displaced workers will be reassigned to other tasks. Hess says research shows nearly half of U.S. jobs could be automated, including retail stores, doctors who scan x-rays for disease, and administrative, legal, and middle management jobs. Banking shows automation changes, but does not necessarily end jobs for humans. The first automatic teller machines, or ATMs, were installed 50 years ago and grew to 420,000 in the United States alone. But an analysis by the International Monetary Fund shows the number of human tellers did not drop, it actually rose a bit. Tremont Capital Group's Sam Zion spoke via Skype.
I think that because humans, were primarily doing, mostly service and routine types of tasks that could be converted into more automated tasks, the humans then became far more valuable in customer service and in sales within these branches.
Zion says automation can be scary, but the care and feeding of complex ATMs created new kinds of work for tens of thousands of people. Many experts worry about the employment impact of the growing capability and number of robot drivers, computer kiosks, and other kinds of automation, including advanced forms known as artificial intelligence. But in an interview with Mike Allen of Axios, U.S. Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin says it is 50 or 100 years too soon to worry.
In terms of artificial intelligence taking over American jobs, I think we're so far away from that not even on my radar screen.
But other experts argue the problem is already here. Jim Randall, VOA News, Washington.
It's time now for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54. Traditional dishes come to the rescue in the biggest slums of South Africa. We'll be right back.
I wanted to present music and a side of American culture that is most important to me, that is a part of who I am. They're going to get some incredible performances. That's one of the things I love, bringing these artists in so you can get to see them do what they do. It's soul music, and that's what music is. It's that which comes from the soul.
In one of South Africa's biggest slums, a restaurateur is on a mission to change the township diet by recreating traditional South African dishes with a twist. Here's VOA's Caroline Turner.
It's lunchtime at the Four Room Foods restaurant in the heart of Cape Town's Kiashitsa Township, the city's largest informal settlement where over 3 million people live. Today's menu includes a local popular dish of umqua, creamy butternut pap, homemade tomato relish, crispy onion, and a drizzle of extra virgin seed oil. The menu is unusual. Township diet consists mostly of shitsa nyama, barbecue meat, and pap, which often leads to unhealthy eating habits. But chef and owner of Four Rooms restaurant, Abigail Mbalo Mokwima, wants to change all that by offering local residents a balanced diet using healthier ingredients fused with some of the locally popular dishes.
I call it South African cuisine with a twist because there's so much South African culture, the diversity of South African culture into it, with a twist. It's fused, yes, with the European influences into it, but the main elements on the dish that speak out will always be element that speaks South African.
Abigail said she was inspired to improve eating habits in townships after her brother died of diabetes-related complications. Her philosophy is simple: moving away from a meat-centered lifestyle and back to traditional cooking. In keeping with that theme of fusing traditional and modern, Abigail's restaurant is designed to mimic the four-room homes of her childhood houses in the country's oldest townships, comprised of a kitchen, living room, and 2 bedrooms. Abigail started out with a food truck which offered fine dining on request, but soon branched out into the restaurant she now runs. She cooks up a storm for guests who come from all over the Western Cape. Her take on simple, typical Cape and South African dishes, turning them into fine dining dishes, has won over many critics. Amongst her most popular dishes is the famous Durban bunny chow. She uses a traditional steamed bread loaf, cuts off the top, and fills it with her own version of butter chicken. Then there's the crowd favorite, which she calls runaway chicken, an organic chicken cooked with a spicy sauce.
A cooking style and the atmosphere, it's from way back when. It took me back since my grandmother's days. It's unique, it's tasty, it's different to what we normally used to. There's modern times when we go out, we normally go to the restaurant, the well-knowns, but hers is very different. It's common things that we eat daily, but she's made it very differently with very much taste.
Well, the bunny chow is totally different from a Durban bunny chow. It's made out of a dumpling bread, which is steamed bread, which is a Xhosa bread. And it's a butter chicken. Is what I'll say it is. Sounds like a Gupta butter chicken. It is one of the best butter chicken that one can have. So I found it very delicious. It is not too spicy. It is something that will fill you up as well.
Abigail has big plans for her business and hopes to expand to every corner of South Africa and the rest of Africa.
We have plans of taking this to other parts of the continent. Hence, in the beginning, I talked about, us South Africans taking our food globally and celebrating South African food, traveling to any country and be able to order South African as you would be anywhere in the world and order Chinese. I would like to see that. Yes, definitely. But firstly, it has to spread out in South Africa, in the oldest townships of South Africa, like your Soweto, Guguletu, where it all, the forum home started. And then obviously spreading it out to other parts of the world.
The self-taught chef says she also hopes to release a cookbook. Carolyn Turner, VOA News, Washington.
Delicious. That's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. For more news, tune into VOA's evening radio show, Africa News Tonight at 1800 UTC, and in the mornings to Daybreak Africa between 0300 and 0600 UTC Monday through Friday. Thanks for watching and good night from Washington.
Welcome to English in a Minute. An alley is a narrow path between or behind buildings.
Up one's alley.
Does this expression have to do with city streets?
Jonathan, do you have any friends who teach singing?
Hello. I am a singer.
You are? Oh, awesome. Do you